1 Super, Human Screening. You are listening at FameTV.info. Ase sighed as he stood up straight in the center of the large crowd. The palms of his hands were sweaty. He had grown up in a small village with not too many people occupying it, so he was uncomfortable in this large crowd. Trying not to look conspicuous, Ase looked around him, taking in the surroundings. The location of this event certainly was impressive. The venue they had gathered in was a large square hall. The floor of the hall was laid with what seemed to be large marble tiles that had been polished to a fine sheen. The chairs surrounding the main floor were finished in red velvet. In the middle of the floor a looming square dot-shaped stage had been erected, and this was the center of attention for the onlooking audience. Ase cast his gaze upwards. There he saw 2 tiers of balconies above the bottom floor. The balconies seemed to lean in over the sizable stage, which made the prospect of getting up onto that stage all the more intimidating. Looking up even further, Ase saw perhaps the most impressive part of the hall. The ceiling was decorated with a giant painting circled by a vast number of intricate stone carvings. The painting itself was incredible. It was of 10 dragons fighting an army of tigers. The colors used was bold and striking and gave the dragons a feeling of immense power. The hall was truly impressive, and every detail was meticulously thought out and planned. However, despite the grand beauty of the hall, the crowd gathered was not interested in their surroundings. In fact, all attention was focused on the man standing in the middle of the large stage at the center of the floor. The man standing on the stage was in his late 40s with a slightly receding hairline. He had a number of gray hairs speckled about in the hair that he still had. He stood very tall, and had wide broad shoulders. Down the middle of his face was a jagged scar which only added to the rugged look he exuded. It was clear that he had seen his fair share of hard-fought battles in his time. "We are living in a golden age," the man proclaimed in a bellowing voice. "A time of super beings, space travel and advanced science. Some of you here today have the potential to stand at the pinnacle. This is your first test. Pass this, and countless opportunities will open up before you." The hall began to buzz at the mention of the man's words. The crowd's eyes began to light up, and some of the audience were not able to stand still. The excitement was visible amongst the audience. However, the man on the stage's voice shot up another level, and a stillness descended on the crowd. "We will not be accepting trash. Those who aren't worthy shall not walk this path." The audience was hanging on his every word at this point. The anticipation in the hall was building at every word spoken. "That being the case, prove to us today that you are worthy." At this, everyone in the crowd let out a loud roar, audibly pumped up by the man's short but obnoxious speech. The man on the stage let out a smile as he arrogantly basked in the adulations of the crowd. "This is so ridiculous." Ase thought to himself. From the beginning, Ase never had a desire to join a super being training school. It was forced upon him. "Go put your powers to use and earn some money, so your parents can retire early." The words of his father echoed in his head. He really was a hateful man, forcing Ase into such an uncomfortable and alien environment, all for the sake of some money. The man who has been giving the speech now stepped down from the stage, and a much shorter, smartly dressed woman took his place on the stage. "Thank you, Mr. Nabasawa, for opening this super-human screening with that rousing speech." The woman, who was obviously the organizer for this event, smiled and nodded at Mr. Nabasawa in acknowledgement. Seeing this, Mr. Nabasawa smiled and casually waved his hand, enjoying the attention. "Now, all of those who will be participating in the super-human screening, can you please proceed to the waiting room through the door to the left of the stage and wait for your names to be called." The crowd obediently followed the woman's order and began to slowly filter into a large waiting room. As Ase began to do the same, he thought to himself, "What have I gotten myself into?" Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.